Welcome back, everyone, to the Kriya Yoga podcast. I'm here with Donelle Mason, all the way from New Zealand. She recently joined us for the Kriya Yoga and the Sacred Fire Solstice Retreat at the Himalayan Institute, and that was June of 2026, just a few days ago. We will be doing this retreat again in 2027 during the summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. So if you're interested in joining us, stay tuned to our website. This retreat did fill up fairly quickly within the first month or two of announcing it. So put this on your calendar, the June solstice in 2027, and look for an announcement for registration to begin in January of 2027. All right, Donelle, you've got some questions for me. What are they?
I have got some questions, Ryan. Let's start off with one on ritual. I have read quite often that yogis are not supposed to indulge in forms of external ritual because the path is nivritti, so turning away. And personally, I've found rituals to be, quite pleasant, but sometimes they do seem to be very superficial. People, dressing up in this way of ritual to maybe see how holy I am. And I know that in different cultures that has something to do with it. Is it something just to identify with it? Do you think that these extravagant rituals would get in the way? How do we sort of go with this devotional aspect of ritual as opposed to entertainment and social factors?
All right. Well, I wasn't expecting that question. So, I think rituals are extremely important so long as they're meaningful to you. So if you find a ritual to be helpful to keep you focused on your path and to help generate a sense of devotion for you, then they're meaningful for you. Yogis are not supposed to necessarily get so involved in ritual because it can turn into an ego trap where you are defining yourself through these outward activities. And as a yogi, it is an inward path. So in my early life, I really enjoyed practicing mantras. I really enjoyed some spiritual, devotional activities, and I still do. But it's a problem mainly when we define ourselves through them, and when we don't look deeper into what the rituals are actually pointing towards. So if you enjoy rituals, I think that's just fine. But ultimately, I would check in every now and then to make sure that you're not just using that as some kind of crutch and that you understand the deeper meaning of those rituals and it helps guide you to a greater sense of inner knowledge and inner awareness. So rituals are just fine. You just have to engage them appropriately.
I agree. Yeah, I think that ultimately that true devotion is going to be to the Lord of the universe and whoever it's meaningful for you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's have, what do you think the barrier was in the early stages of your practice to learning the Sanskrit language and the pronunciation in your earlier years? I observed that Mr. Davis did not use a great deal of Sanskrit language in his books. And what was it that moved your thinking to want to do this? How our once rigid ideas do evolve over time, so it's best not to be too fixed.
Well, one thing I've learned in my life is if I say in the beginning, I'm not going to do that, no way, I always find out that later in life I end up having to do something like that. Mr. Davis he didn't want people to get fixated on the Sanskrit language because a lot of people would see it as something exotic and fascinating. And so they would spend more time in that exotic fascination rather than in their practice. And Mr. Davis also was very adamant that we should be able to teach these things with uncomplicated language. And there's one video, I think I sent it to you and Brian before this solstice retreat, where Mr. Davis was saying that he could give a talk on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and not use one Sanskrit word. And we also have to consider that for him, he was teaching in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and so on. And now every yoga teacher knows Sanskrit or a few of the words or how to write the alphabet. And in that time, it was a bit rarer. So when he would give talks to large groups of people, using the Sanskrit could often detract from what he could share and what he could impart with just the English language that he knew. So that's why he approached it that way. My barriers to learning Sanskrit, once I began studying Kriya Yoga, I did first connect with Vyas Houston, and that was over 25 years ago. I got his Yoga Sutras, the workbook. Yoga Sutras. Yes, it's just called the workbook, right?
The practice?
No, the one where it's got
the sutras in it. Yeah.
the sutras in it.
Yeah.
Anyway, his workbook where it's got the direct translations, and I used that a lot for my own translation of the sutras. I really enjoyed his CDs. I even got his Sanskrit by CD, the huge multi-volume set, and I didn't touch it for many years. Off and on, I would go back and look at it. But I think my obstacle to Sanskrit was more of I was tired of being in school. And we've talked about this a lot, over the trip since you've been here. Is when I was in high school, when I was in college, I didn't really enjoy being in school, even though I did well at it. I just kind of wanted to get on with life. So I found that learning Sanskrit often reminded me of that experience. And even now, studying it through university, while I do enjoy it once I get started, I do still have that slight aversion of, I've got to do homework now.
Yeah. It's a bit of a slog. It's hard work.
Yeah. But one of the things that the teacher at the university said, she said, we have to remember that the study of Sanskrit is, in a way, an engagement of practice with the Divine Mother, particularly Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge and arts and writing and so on. And Vyas Houston told me that too, because he taught me the Bhutajaya and the Indriyajaya practices, and I was really into that. And I would practice that for several hours a day. And he would say, if you learn a little more of the Sanskrit, number one, he said, you won't need me anymore. And then he said, you understand a lot of the deeper meanings of this whole process. And I told him, well, I really like just meditating on it. I really like going into the experience of it. And he said, well, the study of Sanskrit is also can be a meditative and devotional practice and can organize the mind, which will make your meditation better. And, I do make a big deal about how we need to listen to our teachers, and how when Mr. Davis told me to do something, I would just do it. And I consider Vyas Houston to be a very important teacher in my life, and I have to admit, he's told me to do that, and I am doing what he has said, but I do struggle with it. But I've learned to listen, and so really the main obstacle for me was just that aversion.
Aversion to school.
The aversion to school.
Being told what to do.
Yeah, but I do love it. I love it. I love the practice. I love being able to know these words, and I have found that as I've studied more and as I've increased my vocabulary, even, for example, the Bhagavad Gita is a great thing to consider. We read a lot of commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, and a lot of those commentaries are very good, but when you actually look at the Sanskrit of the Bhagavad Gita, you get a deeper meaning of the language. And so, for example, one of the things Vyas Houston told me was, he said one of the greatest commentaries on the Yoga Sutras was the Bhagavad Gita. And when I started looking at it in Sanskrit, I realized he's right. And it's also one of the greatest Sankhya texts, and we don't necessarily get that when we see a more generalized translation. So for me, it has really helped to understand the deeper process. And also, what really started this whole ball rolling for me was the Holy Science by Sri Yukteswar. Right. We have this book that is available to us that was published by SRF, and it's a wonderfully inspiring book. I read it more times than I can remember. But one day I was looking at the Sanskrit, and I saw a word in there that was not actually in the translation. And I thought, well, that's funny, because that's a very important word to skip over. So it was really seeing that made me say, I need to see what's really going on here. And that's when I personally didn't know enough Sanskrit to translate it myself, but I found someone who did, from the American Sanskrit Institute, Zoe Mai, to help me. And when I saw the actual literal translation of it, it really hits in a very different way, which was the whole purpose of the Understanding the Holy Science course that we did, and also Understanding the Holy Science book that's available. So that's the roundabout way of answering that question. Yeah.
Better understanding. Yeah. Okay. How do you guide people when to recognize the difference between real genuine insight and the mental understanding that they might have about something? So that's it, jnana, knowing, the mentally knowing, understanding, but between that and genuine insight.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, and that's really where it comes down to a sense of trust between a teacher and a student. And it also depends on my own level of understanding. So, for example, if I have understood something well, and I know I've understood it well because it works in practice, it's been confirmed by my own teachers or by parts of the tradition. If I have that understanding and a student is talking to me and they demonstrate that same understanding, then it's easy for me to validate and confirm, oh yeah, this is accurate. But if I have that understanding, they're trying to explain something that doesn't feel quite right, it's a little off, it's not exactly in alignment with what my personal experience has been, and again, confirmed through my own teachers and so on, I don't just say, no, you're wrong, unless you're blatantly wrong. I'll just give a little nudge or a little insight or even a practice that will help them understand that a little bit better. Yeah. So, for example, when I'm describing aspects of the subtle body, or when I'm trying to describe a subtler principle within the Yoga Sutras, there are certain practices that you can say, well, we'll meditate on this or contemplate this for a little while. And I know if they do it, because it worked for me, then eventually they'll have that aha moment. So it's more about kind of guiding them in that way. And ultimately, it's a delicate situation because I have learned, and you probably know this too, it's really easy to to trick yourself into thinking you know something. But that is why, personally, I find it extremely important to have access to experienced teachers. And we talked about this during the retreat this past weekend, that the experiences that I have, if it's a one-off experience, I will trust myself on it. But I do like to make sure that I can check in with someone who has more experience to confirm or deny that. And oftentimes what I'll also find is, if I don't have someone like that, what I'll do is I'll wait and I'll continue studying, and sometimes that confirmation will pop up in a book or in a sacred text that will affirm that. And if I have a realization and it never pops up as something that is confirmed by the tradition or by a teacher, it might be beneficial to me, but it's not something I'm going to talk about publicly with others. And so I think we really have to learn to trust the tradition, try to make sure we have access to the clearest and most helpful teachers we have. But ultimately, in the end, when you see your success in knowing and understanding, and it's confirmed over many, many, many years, then yes, eventually you just trust yourself and know that you are on the right path because you found that it has worked so many times before. So there is a subtle dynamic to that you have to navigate, but I think that's the best way to approach it.
Which kind of leads me really nicely into the next question of a similar vein, which was, when you reached or came to understand from experience that level of Purusha, the seer established in its own nature, was it amazingly, blindingly obvious to you, or that gradual process getting subtler and deeper and clearer over time?
Yeah, it was gradual.
Gradual, yeah.
And while you can have sort of profound experiences, you're like, wow, that's what it is. In my experience, it was just a little bit of understanding every day. And that's one thing that I really liked about Mr. Davis was someone asked him one time, are you enlightened? And Mr. Davis said, all I know is I'm a little more awake each day. And also I've noticed with students, it's students who are getting it in a way that will have longevity, students who are getting it in a way that the realization will stick with them over time, they have that same experience of that it is not a mind-blowing experience. Exactly. And I think we were talking about this with one of the participants during our retreat. She said, oh, I had this realization of the self, and it was just like, oh, well, that's obvious. And I've talked to several students that when that happens, it's just like stepping through a door where you move from one room to the next and now you can see the other room, but you're not overwhelmed by it. So my experience has been that that seems to give the most lasting kind of realization, because otherwise it's usually a peak experience accompanied by extreme emotions or bursts of hormones or who knows what. And then the problem with that is people then go chasing that fantastic peak experience feeling. And the knowing of the self is just as natural as knowing what color your hair is once you see it. Yeah.
Okay. This is one about the renunciant life. So the renunciant life is one of offering oneself completely to God, all energy, all devotion, brahmacharya. Have you struggled with the yogic ideals of renunciate life? We've got the life of the householder, which is advocated in our path by Lahiri Mahasaya. But is it just a step? Once all our desires are eliminated, what need is there for this pleasant home life and material objects and entertainment, social connections? And if there is a desire and attachment, then that could result in rebirth. We're advised to be turning away from distraction, and if we're all headed for kaivalya and desirelessness, then are we delaying it by allowing the fulfillment of the desires in this life?
That's a good question. I mean, I think I struggled with both because, I'd read those stories in Autobiography of Yogi and I read about other yogis and I would think, oh, I want to give it all up and just go away.
Yeah.
And, we jokingly talked about how with currently opportunities to become a swami have come up, and I've thought about it. And the more I think about it, the more I realize, well, maybe one day. But also I find that vow of being a swami needs to be very important. Like you become a swami for a very good reason. And to take on something like that level of renunciation when really you still have a lot of attachments, or you still have a home, or you still have your huge bank account, or you still have, there are some swamis that still have relationships. And again, everyone has their own path, but for me, there is a distinct and very real reason as to why there are certain requirements of becoming a swami. But as far as, are we delaying our kaivalya, or are we delaying our awakening by having attachments? Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because if you've got them, then you're not going to be experiencing the states that the yogis talk about. But what I've learned through life is that the renunciation is an inward thing. So, for example, I have a home, I'm in a relationship, I have friends, I have to pay bills and so on, but deep down inside, I'm not attached to those things. I do love them, but if the time ever came when it was told that I need to let those things go, sure, I might cry and complain a little bit, but deep down inside, I know that there's just another step that needs to be taken. So you're right, Lahiri Mahasaya and this householder lifestyle is important, but that's mainly so that we can make sure that we are actually working out these desires versus just saying, I want to run away to the Himalayas and still have the desires. I think it was Roy had said that Yogananda had said that he has met the yogis who are in the Himalayas, and he says during the day they argue about philosophy, and in the evening they argue about who gets the firewood. So ultimately, if we can be where we are in our life and be appropriate and let the joy flow through, let the sorrow flow through, but still remain aware of what you are at the essence of your being, then that's a more useful form of renunciation versus forcing renunciation. Or on the opposite end, just trying to get all your desires met. It came up a lot during our retreat, this idea of who's coming back in the next life and those who aren't coming back. And I said something like, while you're here, enjoy while you're here, with the idea that I'm enjoying it because I'm not coming back this way again. And I feel that if we can approach life in that way, then you can be alive with what's here, but then you are acutely aware of the fact that you are not coming back here again, assuming that's your trajectory. And then that makes everything in your life experience really more rich. And then when it's time to go, you can go. So
it's more of a natural, steady way forward where these desires are naturally sort of dropping off. Maybe it's an age factor.
yeah, maybe it's an age factor,
Yeah.
but many people have said, and again, Brian mentioned this during the retreat, during his talk, that a lot of the things that he was really driven by or that pulled to him, he didn't actively try to give them up. It's just that as he practiced and as he continued on his path, they naturally fell away.
Yeah.
And so the more that we practice Kriya Yoga, the more that we engage our spiritual path, just because we are growing into spiritual maturity, a lot of the stuff that seemed important to us when we were not experiencing that just falls away. It's just like a natural evolution as a child moving to an adult.
Okay, I've got a question here about sort of making sense of the many branches and variations of Kriya Yoga. Yeah, the lineage always appears to start at the same head. We've got Mahavata Babaji, and then branches out, and some of the branches offer quite different techniques, and they all proclaim that they're the authentic path. Yeah. And as not growing up in a religious household, I sort of maybe think it's the experience of churches teaching and preaching different things. And it sort of saddens me that there's not more inclusion with all the separate branches. Yeah. So how do you sort of reconcile that?
It saddens me too.
Yeah.
How do I reconcile it? I just recognize that humans have been doing this for centuries, if not as long as they've been alive, where someone gets an idea and they think they've got the right way, and so they run around telling everyone that they've got the right way. There are these different branches because there are different temperaments of people.
Yeah.
And for example, I absolutely love and respect Paramahansa Yogananda and the work he did, and I understand why he did what he did. I was talking to Pandit Tigunayat on the way home. Well, I met with him before we left at the Himalayan Institute, and he had an interesting comment. He said, Yogananda was the only teacher who actually considered who he was talking to, meaning he was kind of indicating that Lahiri Mahasaya and even Sri Yukteswar and others, that they absolutely taught it accurately. But it was Yogananda who kind of looked out at the audience and read the room and said, okay, how can we share this with people such that they'll be able to at least begin doing it? And then as time goes on, then they will start to understand these more intricate processes and philosophies and so on. So I thought that was a funny comment. But ultimately, I think it comes down to recognizing and trusting that people will find the way that is most appropriate to them. I remember when I got started, I was fanatic about Kriya Yoga, but the funny thing was I didn't actually know about all these other lineages, so I wasn't running around saying I've got the best lineage. It wasn't until we got the internet and people could start making YouTube videos and writing books on whatever they wanted that now I started to see, oh, now we have the pure way. So maybe that was always going on. I don't know, but because I just interacted with Roy and I interacted with the lineage as I knew it, that it never occurred to me that there were other people out there saying they had the one true way.
Yeah.
But also we have to remember that sometimes that helps to empower people. If they think they've got the one true way, then they're going to be more likely to practice, and they're going to be more likely to just stay engaged in it, just because for them at that stage, they need that slight sense of specialness to actually do it.
Right, the one secret technique.
Yeah, so if you think that you've got the one secret technique and everyone else is wrong and that helps you practice, I wouldn't do that. But if it helps, do it. Because in time, if it really is truly the one secret technique, your mind will start to expand and you will start to see that all these different branches of the lineage do authentically lead to the same place.
Yeah.
So I guess mainly it's more about just having patience with our brother and sisters on the path, and realize that some people are just a little more broad-minded, and that's okay, and some people aren't, but that's what's necessary for them to be successful. So yeah, I wish it wasn't that way, but I wish a lot of things. And as I've said at the retreat, you can wish in one hand and poop in the other, and you can see which one fills up first. That was the PG version of that.
I think it was the same for me. I didn't even look anywhere else. So it was sort of 7 years just thinking that this was the one way. And then sort of 7 years in, I thought, I wonder what else is around in New Zealand. And then sort of discovered, oh gosh, they're quite different, you know. Yeah, yeah. That was why that question came up.
Yeah.
Okay. Couple more. So I've got here, what do you know now that you wish you had known at the beginning of your path? Yeah. I mean, how much of the practices that you were taught by Roy do you still practice daily? Yeah. And is there something you wish you knew now?
Probably. Well, so the first part of that question, what do I still practice that I learned?
Yeah. Yeah.
I still practice everything that I learned.
Yeah.
And I try to, when we do more public workshops and even the more private workshops and retreats, I still do the exact same Kriya Pranayama technique I was taught in 2000,
Yep.
26 years ago. I still do alternate nostril breathing every single day before I do Kriya Pranayama. So the practices that I learned, I still do.
Yep.
They set up a really wonderful foundation. So there are more, I'm just going to use the word advanced. I don't really want people to get into looking for advanced things, but there are things that I do that we could call advanced only because now I'm sitting for 2 hours or 2.5 hours at a time, whereas before I struggled to meditate for 15 minutes to 30 minutes. So I have a lot more space to engage in other things during that time. But I wish I knew everything. I wish I knew.
Speed things up a bit.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that the other day. I was thinking about how it's interesting that we have to go through this process and reach a certain stage, and by the time we get into midlife and then older, now hopefully we know some things that are helpful. And I think, well, how much better would life have been in my 20s
had you known it then?
Had I known it then?
Yeah.
So I guess I would say everything.
Everything, yeah.
But then again, I reflected on the fact that, well, that's really the whole purpose of the human life, is to go through those experiences.
That journey.
The journey, yeah. So would I really change anything? Probably not. Do I wish I would have known then what I know now? Yes. Yeah. But I also recognize that I don't think I could have known now.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have known then what I know now had I not gone through all the experiences.
Steps, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't think of anything.
No, that
really.
Answers it. Yeah. And the same for me. Those practices I still do. If I'm doing something else, then it might be in the evening practice, but the morning is always the same. And then later in the day, there might be a chance to sort of do something that's a little different. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think jumping around helps at all. And looking for novel experiences or novel practices, well, that's sort of counter to what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I always think of it like a master artisan or someone who's a master of their trade. They will spend as much time doing the tiny little detail work that seems like nothing to someone else as they will to what you might consider to be bigger aspects of that project. And I think the same thing is true for our spiritual path, that if we are always looking for something novel or the sixth Kriya technique or something like that, and we're not able to really fully embody and engage in the simple movement of the breath through the spine, I've always said that the most advanced techniques are actually the less complicated.
Yeah.
Because the more complicated a technique is, well, you need that because the mind needs something more to do to have stability. But someone who is really present, they can do one very simple thing and have all of their awareness, or as you say, awareness. It was a joke from the retreat. Awareness is your flap of skin that is over your elbow, and we have a comedian in an actual real comedian, not just
not you.
We're not just being sarcastic here. An actual real comedian at the retreat. He said every time Donelle says awareness, it reminds him of a weenus.
Yeah.
But anyway, if we can just engage our awareness in one simple thing, that's more of an advanced state than having to do all the tricks.
I got to the stage in my practice where I sort of got almost so far out that I was like, you know what, this is not working anymore. I'm just going to go right back, strip it right back to the simplest of things. And that was when things were, steady again. Good. Okay, last one. Any thoughts on how, again, to guiding someone after they've located the self, so let's say call that self-realization, to see the self in everything. So maybe we call that God realization or oneness. Yeah.
So say that question again.
It's how to guide someone who's got that initial glimpse that there is the self, that there is a self, to being to oneness, so from self-realization to God realization.
There's no real
expansion way.
It's really just continued practice. It's just like in the Yoga Sutras, where I believe in chapter 4 it says that when a yogi is well established in their practice, sometimes these subliminal activators will still pop up like out of nowhere. And then it says, well, how do you deal with that? Well, you deal with it the way you dealt with the original ones, which is just to keep practicing in the same way. So there isn't like a profound technique. It's just keep doing what you're doing. And oftentimes what I've kind of noticed that really what yoga is doing, yogic meditation is doing, is it's like, would you call it immersion therapy? Like, for example, if someone is afraid of something, you would sort of introduce that to them a little bit, and then they'd be a little afraid. You just keep doing it over and over again until eventually they recognize, oh, I don't need to be afraid of that. Well, the same thing is true with what you're describing. When a person does have a moment of, where they catch that glimpse of abiding as the self, and it might be momentary, but they did it. And then it slips away because the mind starts going again. And then they keep meditating. It gets a little bit longer. So every time you meditate successfully, ideally, you will get closer to catching a glimpse of abiding as the self. And every day you do that, you touch it, you enter it just for a moment or two, but that begins to accumulate. And then over time, you start to recognize, just like this idea of, again, I think the word's immersion therapy, that you've touched it so many times, you've experienced it so many times, that you also then begin to start recognizing it in other areas of your life, or you start seeing it in other people as well. So really, there's no. You can affirm. I see the self in all. When you go through your life, you can consciously try to remember what was that like, and then look around you and recognize that it's there. So you can do that, and that can be helpful. But in my experience, it's more just going through the processes, coming up against it, brushing against it, stepping into it for a millisecond or 30 seconds or so on. And then you do that every day until eventually a year or two goes by. And then it just becomes easier for you to recognize, I can just step right into that.
Happens more and more often.
It happens more and more often. Again, that goes back to that comment from Mr. Davis, are you enlightened? He says, all I can say is I'm a little more awake every day. And to see an end point, is there an end to all this? Yeah, absolutely. But I wouldn't get focused on an end point. We are in a process here, and as long as we can stay engaged in that process, when the end point comes, we'll know it.
We'll know it.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about, is this it? You'll know it.
Very good. Well, I'll just take the opportunity, since I'm here, just to humbly and deeply thank you for your steady, sincere, non-weird, most of the time. Being so steady with the content, keeping us all engaged with things to continue with and grow with. It's very accessible. Your humour and wit and your devotion does come through as well, and all your teaching. And I feel very, very blessed to have been on this path, as I'm sure all of your other students do as well, Ryan. So thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. And before we go, though, are you thinking of doing the 12-week introduction course?
Yes.
Guiding that?
Yes,
maybe
probably time I do that. So we might be looking at maybe August, September, October might work for me down in the Southern Hemisphere.
Okay. So what we're talking about there is the 12-week introduction course that we have on Teachable. From time to time, myself or other teachers in this tradition, such as Brian Kriegler, he's done a few of those, and Donelle, you can go through the 12-week course, which has pre-recorded content to learn Kriya Yoga, and then they will facilitate a weekly Q&A session live on Zoom, and also a weekly meditation session to help you understand the practice and to engage the practice more. So we're going to look to August of 2027 or somewhere around there.
26.
Or 26, yeah, pardon me. Back up.
Yep.
August of 2026, which is only a few months from now. And we'll announce that on the kriyayogaonline.com blog, or if you're a Patreon member or a Teachable member, we'll announce it there too. So, well, it's been wonderful to have you here.
It's been lovely to be here.
Yeah, you're flying out in a few hours?
A few hours, yes. Yeah, on that 14.5-hour flight.
Yeah. Donelle is a great example of a dedicated student, because sometimes I'll have people write to me and they'll say, I can't come to the retreats, it's too far away, and they live 3 hours away.
Yeah.
And she's been to the States. She came to Center for Spiritual Awareness when we began the apprenticeship program, and was it 2018 or 19?
I think 18 was the first year, and I came over at the end of 19, at the end of the second year.
Yeah. So she came over then. She joined us in Ireland in 2023, and that's when you were ordained. Yep. And then you came over in May of 2025.
Yes.
And now you're here in 2026.
Yeah.
So she's the one that I say you don't have any excuses.
Yeah, it'll be probably 36 hours or so from door to door of traveling.
Well, we appreciate your devotion too.
Thank you.
So, all right. Well, thank you for being with us today, Donelle. It was wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for listening. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comment section, and I look forward to speaking with you again during our next podcast. So be well. Peace. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Kriya Yoga podcast. To learn more about Kriya Yoga meditation, you can visit us at kriyayogaonline.com, where you can find information about current book releases, online classes, and in-person retreats throughout the year. If you're interested in supporting this podcast, visit us at the Kriya Yoga Online Patreon community at patreon.com/Kriya Yoga.